Can't make this up.
A 16-year-old girl in Tukwila says the store manager of a Build-A-Bear refused to let her name her teddy bear Charlie Kirk. This is a petty yet very revealing moment of not just wokeism, but this cultural rot that we've all been experiencing for the last several years, a cultural rot we've been talking about since the assassination of Charlie Kirk. King 5 reports that Evie McCormick faced an uncomfortable confrontation at the Build-A-Bear at the South Center Mall, explaining that all she wanted to do was honor Charlie Kirk by giving her stuffed animal his name. And yet, the manager at this location reportedly balked, claiming that it was against store policy, and then throwing away I guess they provide quote-unquote birth certificates for these bears, just throwing it away, Evie McCormick said.
That turned my life around in more ways than I can express. And his name is Charlie Kirk. She just didn't agree with it. She didn't support it, and she told me, we're not doing this. Folded it up in the forest and threw it away. I scoffed, walked away. I was like, Kaylee, you have to pay for this. I handed her my card, told her my PIN, and I walked away. It wasn't political until she made it that way.
It wasn't political until she made it that way. A good way to summarize all of this. You have a teenage girl who tries to name a toy after someone that she admires, dealing with an adult, presumably an adult, behind the counter, deciding that her personal political beliefs will trump just basic customer service. It is disgusting. And apparently Build-A-Bear knows that. Although it didn't all unfold probably the way it ought to once the mother, I think her name is Amber, called and tried to deal with this. She told King 5 that initially she called, she was on the phone for something like 45 minutes, only to then be offered a $20 gift card, which I don't even think covers the cost of the teddy bear, but also is completely besides the point. I don't know if they were calling because they wanted a gift card. They wanted, I presume, an apology and an explanation and a commitment that something like this isn't going to happen again. Because as it turns out, no, this is not against store policy. It's not against corporate policy. But then the girl's mom said eventually, I think it was like 2 or 3 days later, Build-A-Bear corporate calls back with an apology and an acknowledgement that this should never have happened to begin with, and a vow that they're going to better train employees to keep politics out of all of this.
I did call corporate, and I was on the phone for a good 45 minutes. They offered me a $20 gift card just because we had a poor customer experience.
Did she apologize?
She did. She said that their goal is to try to prevent this sort of situation from happening to anybody else.
I mean, it's really easy to ensure it doesn't happen again to anyone else. You have a zero tolerance policy for something like this, and you terminate this lunatic person. Unless we're being lied to here, it seems pretty cut and dry. It seems hard to believe that any staff member, that this particular staff member, whomever she is, obviously we don't know who she is, but it seems hard to believe that if this 16-year-old girl walked in and wanted to name her teddy bear Che Guevara or Karl Marx or just Antifa the teddy bear, that there would have been any pushback whatsoever, that this particular staff member would have said, oh, no, we can't do it. And then rudely, as she claimed happened, just not only dismiss this customer, but just throw away or toss away this quote-unquote birth certificate. I find it hard to believe that that would have happened. And yet the moment a conservative figure gets honored, suddenly there's a policy that might get in the way. We have seen over the course of the last few years, conservative kids getting punished for Bible verses on T-shirts. We've seen MAGA hats getting ripped off of the heads of college students, including here in Washington State. We've seen speakers getting shouted down on college campuses. And of course, we've seen an assassination on a college campus of a conservative. The assassination itself was celebrated by scores of leftists, radical leftists. That is the result of a cultural rot. And it's one that's been unaddressed for a very, very long time. And I fear still being unaddressed. It's getting called out in a way by left-wing media to a degree, but mostly by right-wing media. That's not addressing the cultural rot. That's just responding to it. What's being done to get at the underlying cause of this? And I don't pretend to have an answer to what needs to be done. I don't know. I just don't see anything getting better if this is the world we continue to live in. A teddy bear? You're concerned about the name of a teddy bear? Really? That's what your issue is? And that this person would treat this teddy bear named Charlie Kirk in the same way as if the person came in asking for it to be called Hitler is a problem. It's a problem. And you don't think that this would happen if they wanted to name it Donald Trump? Not Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, they would lean in. Joe Biden, they would lean in. Gavin Newsom, oh, for sure. This is a very handsome teddy bear. Looking at himself in a mirror constantly. Well, actually, it seems like a psychopath teddy bear, but see, nevertheless. This is sad. And the saddest part is that this really wasn't about politics. She wasn't going in to make a political position, to make a political point. She was going in, as she explained to King 5, because she wanted to name the bear after someone that she respected and admired. And you can hear it in her voice talking about the assassination, what it actually meant to her and what it did to her. And yet in 2025, in this country at least, even a teddy bear can't escape the culture war. That's sad. That's sad. That is not a good reflection of Build-A-Bear. And I understand that it is a rogue employee, right? I'm not going to pretend that this was some sort of policy at Build-A-Bear Corporate because I don't believe that. But there's a manager who allowed this to happen under her watch, according to this report. And your response is, oh, we'll give more training. No, you can't. I don't think you can train this into people. If that's your response here, I don't believe that you can train that away. I honestly don't. Maybe she was having a bad day. Now, we've got this story written up at seattlered.com. I hope you'll check it out. It's one of those stories that I think needs to be shared, spread. Because if we don't call this stuff out, I'm certain it's never going to go away. Again, I don't know how to get at the underlying cause of this cultural rot, but I am confident that if people aren't aware to the degree that it exists, it's most definitely, we're never going to get to the underlying cause. And it's not like I'm saying boycott Build-A-Bear. Do what you, I honestly don't care, but we should be aware that this is wrong. So at least in the future, I imagine there's going to be some Build-A-Bear staff member who's going to have this incident in the back of his or her head. When she or he is thinking about doing something similar, they might have second thoughts and say, maybe I ought not to do that because I realize that this did not end well for this other person in Tukwila.
That's why you make an example out of people.
Exactly. And, I don't even know if you need to fire the person, although I wouldn't have that person as a manager. That's just a bad judgment call on her part if all these details are accurate. And, corporate hasn't given any statement as far as we can tell to King 5. They simply gave some statement saying, we tackle all personnel matters internally, which is both an accurate reflection of most policies, but also what you say when you're not going to do something. I do feel bad kind of for corporate because there are places that will, in fact, take things like this seriously. And again, I hope that Build-A-Bear will take this seriously. But whenever I hear a statement like that, I assume it means they're not doing anything, which is not fair. And I totally acknowledge it is not fair, but that is my view. Anytime that happens, we can't talk about it. And it sucks for us because I can't talk about what happened yesterday to Duncan, our 11-year-old intern. I'm not allowed to say anything other than we take complaints of abuse towards interns seriously. And that's all we can say. But before you go and wonder if it was, no, he was the one who was abusive to other interns. Oh,
What did he do?
I don't even think I was allowed to say that. Coffee was thrown is all I'm going to say. Now, in his defense, because I've got an HR meeting after this show. I'm going to go to the mat for him because he threw coffee in the face of someone who screwed up the coffee order that was coming to me. That's the kind of intern I want. You would never do something, and you're my producer. But this is an intern.
He's got more of a temper than I do.
And a personality. But that's the kind of commitment I want to this show, this brand, and me personally.
Everyone has to fall on their swords for Jason.
I didn't ask him to. He did this on his own, and I like that kind of initiative. Was it going a little bit too far? Yes, certainly. I never realized that hot coffee could cause that kind of burn on this other poor intern's face. However, the thought is what counts, and he was thinking about me, and I can appreciate that. Now, if you want to shine a spotlight on this Build-A-Bear nonsense, go to seattlered.com, seattlered.com. Let's find out what else is